I've got my water can full of flowers sketched onto my, or I should say traced onto my watercolor paper. I'm using cold pressed for this project today. I'm going to start with these pointy petal flowers, and I just have my warm yellow here, my size 8 round brush, and I'm just going to paint them on the dry petals. Okay, while those are drying, I'm going to jump over to the watering can. Now this I will paint wet and wet, so I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to paint it all as one piece. Then later I can separate the sections with layers of glazing. That'll help create the shadows and the separations between the handle and the spout. All right, I'm gonna mix that again. It looks pretty dark, but it will dry lighter. I'm touching the tip of my brush right against the edges of the flower petals, and then it'll go out where the water is. Just blend smoothly, wet into wet. No hard edges in our watering can. And it does not have to be, you know, an even wash or a really even layer. You know, think of a, you know, old rusty antique watering can. Doesn't look perfect. So we're kind of going for some abstraction and some interesting texture with it. And the wetter your paper is, the less quickly you have to work, which means you can be a little bit more careful. I'm probably going a little fast because I'm used to it, but you don't have to go as fast as this as long as your paper is nice and wet. And again, I'm just going to paint right on the dry paper. Let's do let's try a little indigo indigo is very strong. I don't need that much indigo. Let's do indigo and a little warm yellow. And let's do something that's less earthy, a little bit more vibrant. Maybe something more of an apple green. Since we already used some phthalo blue, let's stick with that. And let's go with our cool Hansa yellow. Running out of room on the little palette here. A little bit more yellow. It's a little too strong. I'm gonna add a slight touch of that pink. The pink has red tones, which neutralize that green a bit, so it's a little less neon, a little bit more realistic. So I like those two colors. Looks like this one's drying a bit though. Let's add a little bit more yellow, a little bit more green. I mean, indigo. And just start filling in those shapes just like the petals. I'll come later, I'll do the stems separately. It's a very, very pretty, happy orange color. Okay, let's do a little glazing. I think what I'd like to do is, for these pointy tip petals, make them darker on the tips and lighter on the inside. So I'm just going to re-wet these petals carefully. I don't want to lift the color that's already there. So with the watering can, we had it really, really wet, which was fine for doing all one color, and it's okay if there's different texture and different amounts of pigment within the wash. But for these petals, if it was to be a lot of water, if you placed your color on the tip, it would all run wherever there's water, and we don't want that. So we want the, I'm gonna be careful not to touch that petal right there. We want it to be just glistening enough to prevent a hard edge, but we don't want it to be flooded. So I added quite a bit of water. I'm gonna wait a moment to let that seep in just a bit. I think these petals are good. They're not overflowing with water. Let's see. Yep, just right. And I'm going to rinse my brush, and I'm just going to coax that blend a little bit. My brush is mostly just slightly damp. I'm just kind of tapping where that orange meets the clear water, just helping to bring it down a little bit more for a smoother blend. I'm going to do the same thing for this flower. I'm going to go back to my other round brush. Add water all the way down so you don't get that hard water line where you don't want it. Now the orange flowers are dry. Yes, they are. So for these, I'm going to make it a little different. I'm going to have them darker at the base and then lighter at the tips. So again, just wetting each petal. It's a little repetitive, but it's actually very, very fun and soothing. All right, for these, I think I'll use a little bit of that Pyro Red. Oops. And I just mixed that right on top of the yellow mixed with the pink. That's pretty. Makes you think of fireworks. Rinse, blot, and tap. As long as the petals are still wet, you can keep pushing that paint around. Little glazing for shadow and definition and separation. So I'm going to start with the spout here. I'm going to paint right where that little this round thing here. I'm painting right where it meets that, all the way down the spout. And I'm just going to add some shadow color here and here. So I still have my gray. I'm going to make it a little deeper color. So again, I have my phthalo blue, my perylene violet, and I don't think I need to add any yellow to that. There's a little bit of yellow still in this dried mix. I'll just kind of reincorporate that into there. Alright, so the spout's still wet. Just tapping the tip right where it meets the top of that spout there. And at the base where it meets the main part. Try to keep a straight line. And then a little bit, oops, right along the very bottom. Imagine the light source is right from above to get a little shadow on the bottom there. Rinse my brush, blot, and just push that color around a little bit. Alright, we'll do the same thing for the handle. It's a little too much water there. Now here I'm going to have the darker color here where it meets at the bottom, here where it meets at the top, and just behind the petal, so it looks like, or I mean the leaf, so it looks like the leaf is throwing that shadow. So again, dip into that darker color. A little bit on that bottom edge. Maybe a little bit here where it curves down. Rinse, blot, push that around a little bit. Let's see, is this... I think that's dry, so I'm going to do the same thing with making a shadow on the bottom and underneath the petals and a little bit on the top. I'm going to avoid where the handle and the spout are meeting, so I don't need to wet the entire watering can. I don't think I'm going to get a water line because I'm not going to have the paint go up that far. And here I'm not even rinsing and blotting yet, I'm just kind of pushing it around. Now under here, over here. know, I'm actually going to add a little bit of water here just to, because now that I'm looking at it, it might have some texture caused from that water line after all. But since, again, it's a rustic old watering can, I'm not too worried about that. But I still don't want it to touch these handles and go into that. And then just adding this little shadow really gives it more of a 3D look. Using, let's see, let's do some more Perylene Violet right on top of that. Let's push it right into that yellow, a little bit of that red. Let's see how this is looking. I already like that color. Maybe a little bit cooler. Added a bit of indigo just to get rid of a little of that maroonish color, maybe a little phthalo. Again, these are all colors that we already used. We're not introducing any new colors that could clash. Okay, maybe a little bit more warmth there. Okay, I like that. So I'm just going to paint these right on the dry paper. So I'm going to do the same thing like I did here. I'm just going to wet this section. Use my darker color. Rinse, blot. Then I'm just going to paint in each of these little circles. And then just start at the base of the leaf. If you don't feel very confident using the brush for this, you could use a pen or a marker. Or you could just leave the pencil lines too. I'm happy with this. I hope you enjoy this project. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!